Good evening and welcome to the November edition of In the World of Winooski, the show that's all about what's going on in the great city, the onion city of Winooski. Hope you're all shaking off that post-turkey comatose and had a great holiday with your families and a wonderful time in this beautiful snow we have. This show is being filmed live on the 27th of November, Tuesday. If you're watching at home and would like to call in as we get into our subject matter, you can call 862-3966. Encourage you to call in with any questions or ideas you have in regards to tonight's content. We have our exciting show tonight. I'm going to welcome a couple guests here in a few minutes. First, go through a little bit of a city update, but we're really going to take a deep dive in something that I've talked about a number of times on the show, and that's the city's engagement in the master planning process. So we're excited to get into those details here in a few moments and hopefully give folks a great update on what's going on in a really important process that maybe a lot of folks don't connect all the dots on how important it is to what the future of our community looks like. I want to open up tonight's show, though, on a very somber note. This past week, the city said goodbye to a long-term public servant and somebody who's given a lot to our community, both in formal roles with the city, as an employee, as city treasurer, also as a school board trustee and school board treasurer, and that's Dr. James Ticehurst. Dr. Ticehurst and actually his entire family have really given of themselves incredibly selflessly through the decades for the city of Winooski. We have a lot to thank Dr. Ticehurst for. Through volunteer efforts and formal roles with the city, Dr. Ticehurst played a really key role in getting the city on really firm financial footing as a treasurer. He was an absolute joy to work with, brought a really high level and sense of professionalism to the city each and every day he came to work with us. And as a citizen, I just want to say too, he was somebody who wasn't afraid to call you out as a public servant. He wasn't afraid to make a point if he thought it was in the best interest of the community, and somebody who fought very hard to ensure that the residents of Winooski were getting a fair shake and that its government was doing the things the way that they should. We said goodbye to Dr. Ticehurst this last week. I want to send condolences to his family and everybody impacted from that loss. And again, just a big thanks to him for all the work that he did for the city and just being a tremendous community member. It'll be a loss that the community will feel a deep loss for a long time over. So our thoughts are with Peg and the rest of the Ticehurst family. Moving on to items relative to the city, but that Dr. Ticehurst's fingers are very much on. He was a big part of designing how we do our budgeting process. And he would be happy to look down and see us following that process now as we move into budget season. As we go into December, next Monday, we'll see the first draft of the city's budget. This is an important budget because a lot of you have probably followed some of the big issues connected to it more closely than in other years, right? We've had some pretty big bond votes. The city's consideration of the reconstruction of Main Street and that bond issuance that folks voted on in May. And also in August, you voted on a special bond vote to authorize council to potentially bond for a pool as well, swimming pool. With both those projects, those bond votes, really what they did, right, is give us the opportunity to go out and get financing details in order in line. Now we're going back to the voters, right, with a budget that executes those projects, that services the debt that we're considering taking out. So voting yes for us to move forward with the bonds was the first step. We hope folks will also come out and that we put forward a budget that you find to be responsible in light of those additional debt services to be able to move forward with those projects. So there's going to be a lot to talk about in this year's budget process. Hope you'll stay engaged in terms of the way the schedule works out. We're going to start in December, the first December meeting with an overall budget. We'll move into our capital improvement budget with our second meeting in December. And then standard, the way we've functioned the past few years, we'll take departments and areas of services one by one or at max two across each Monday in January. So one meeting each Monday in January. There is one holiday in there I'm forgetting, but you can check the city's website, winooskivt.org, and see a full schedule. But remember, now's the time to engage about the budget. It does no good to engage us about the budget draft after February the 1st because council's already voted on something that moves forward. So if you've got thoughts, comments, concerns, focuses you think we should have as a community in terms of our expenditures, now's a great time to ask questions and engage around the budget process. Another item that we're asking for a lot of feedback on right now is housing. Right, and we're going to talk about the master plan in a moment and how that's shaping the direction of housing conversations in the city as well, or reflecting some of those conversations that are taking place. But right now, the Housing Commission's hard at work to put together some potential policy offerings for the city to take under consideration, which includes conversations around inclusionary zoning and perhaps a replacement ordinance too. So we've offered a couple different public opportunities for folks to come in. We've had pretty good attendance at some of those meetings, but I encourage you again to stop by the city website, take a look at some of those presentations that have come out. If you've got thoughts about either the character or composition of housing or the types of housing you think you should see more of in this community, hope you'll take a second to weigh in on that process as well. I just want to send a quick shout out too. We had some really tremendous demonstrations of volunteerism in the city in the last month as well. First off, Halloween was another great success for the city. It was great to see so many people engaged in various events, from the kids' options at VSAC to the Haunted Mill at the Champlain Mill, and of course the Pumpkin Festival. The city's in conversations to keep that going. I think we've repeated that enough times, so we look forward to seeing that continue as a legacy event in the city that really has done some really wonderful things in Winooski. I think owning Halloween, right? We're pretty much the boss of Halloween in the state of Vermont, which we can be proud of. And then just one more shout out, and that is on November 6th, folks came out and voted for elections, and we had a record turnout. Came on the election show, maybe you saw it, for election night here at CCTV. Thanks for all the coverage here from those folks. But really an awesome thing to see over 2,500 people come out and vote in the city of Winooski. A record turnout and far exceeding anybody's expectations in terms of participation. We hope folks are using that energy too to stay engaged on a lot of these local issues that are going on. And behind the scenes, I want to give a huge, huge shout out to all the staff and Carol Barrett, and Janet Bouillard, and the other Winooski staff members, Angela, who do so much to make those elections run so smoothly. There's a lot of work that goes into making sure people can come in and vote and participate in democracy, and a lot of that happens behind the scenes. You don't even notice or see it. You just walk in, cast your vote, and walk out. But there's a lot of hours, time, and thought that goes into making sure that's a smooth operation. So thanks to everybody that does that, and also our volunteers who help out with that too. Mike O'Brien, Kathy Picard, a number of folks who have year over year invested their time and energy to ensure that people have a really great experience in coming to vote, and we have really good feedback about what it's like at the polls. So thanks for all the efforts for everybody there. So awesome demonstration of community service and awesome demonstration of community engagement and people being involved. So the next topic is one that a lot of people might not think about on a regular basis engaging, because it can be a little wonkish. And I'm very, very excited today to welcome two guests who have been driving an important process for the city of Winooski, both behind the scenes and in public. And today I'm welcomed by Eric, our new planning director here in the city of Winooski, and also Regina Mahony from the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
And today we're going to talk a little bit about an update about what's going on with the master plan. So People have heard a little bit about this maybe behind the scenes. They've engaged in some of the sort of peripheral events, but it's really moving forward now, and it's really time for it to go. So now's the time, I think, for folks really to sink their teeth into what's happening from the city's perspective and what's going to be the guiding document for a lot of the work and investments that take place in the future. So hoping we can start off by talking about who's leading this charge, right? So you guys are both planners. Eric, you're fairly new with the city. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself in terms of where you came from and how you came to the city of Winooski?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much for having me out tonight. So I've been a land use planner for about 17 years now, started my career in South Georgia. From there, I moved to Pennsylvania for about 10 years, and then back in 2015, my wife and I moved to Vermont. And I started working for the Central Vermont Regional Planning Commission. So I've been in regional planning pretty much my whole career. And then back in July of this year, I was offered the opportunity to work for the city of Winooski and really get in at the ground level in a municipality and really try to try to engage and impact what the community looks like and how it grows into the future. So it was a great opportunity that I couldn't pass up.
Great, awesome. Well, welcome. We
Thank you very much.
Amazing things about the work you're doing, the service you provide for residents and people looking to develop in the city alike. So
thank you.
We're excited to have you. And Regina, where do you come from?
So I work for Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. Our offices are right in Winooski, so it's a great place to be. And we exist essentially to assist the municipalities on a variety of planning topics, from transportation, water quality, to municipal planning and zoning. So Winooski got a grant from the state, Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development, to fund this planning effort, and contracted with us to help assist in writing it. So that's what we've been doing, and since July-ish, I think, and it's been great.
Great. And we try to say this as often as possible. Without the Regional Planning Commission, there's so many things in this region that wouldn't get done because of the professional support that you provide that communities simply can't afford to keep totally on staff and in-house. Big thanks to the work you guys do. So maybe you want to expand upon that a little bit and talk about what planners do both locally and regionally.
Yeah, so I can start from the local side, even though I have experience with both local and regional planning. The local side, really, I'm at least in the case of Winooski, I'm the first point of contact for anybody that wants to develop their land. Mm-hmm. I, as the zoning administrator as well, will interpret our regulations that dictate the size of buildings, the location of buildings on a lot, what the specific uses can be, and things of that nature. So it's really a lot of work at the ground level in the community from one aspect, the zoning side, but also looking locally at kind of the longer picture, mm-hmm. Longer term, to see how the community should grow and develop in the future. So it's a mix of both from my role as both the planning and zoning manager for the city.
Mm-hmm. And in regional planning, what's that look like?
Yeah. So I think I'll just step back a tiny bit. Planning in general, I think as a discipline, can really help with more of a sort of umbrella look at everything that any level of government or community is grappling with. And so we're sometimes pretty high up in our work, and we really help sort of bring different voices together and help kind of steer the way towards the future with a bunch of competing interests, and just trying to help balance all that out. Mm-hmm. So at the regional level, we certainly do that. We assist with municipalities on a variety of different projects, and the plans are one of them, these municipal plans, and they really do just that. They are sort of the embodiment of trying to pull together all the different issues that municipalities are dealing with, and try to pave the way towards the future.
Great. And so you've both been working with Winooski's master plan. So where are we at? Where's Winooski stand? And we're here because obviously there's something exciting to announce, and that's that there's something people can look at, right? And where can they find that information? What's available to them? Yeah,
so we just last month, or actually earlier this month, the Planning Commission voted to put out the draft master plan to public comment. So we finally have a draft that is available for folks to look at. It's available on our website, which is winooskivt.org, at the master plan section. We can also have hard copies available in our office if people want to see those as well. But it really is a big milestone getting to this point. The city, and in particular the Planning Commission and staffs, have worked very hard over the last 4 or 5 months to get this draft developed, and with huge thanks to the Regional Planning Commission in making that happen. So we're pretty excited to have that draft out.
So who owns that plan? You mentioned the Planning Commission, and there's obviously regional planning taking place, and then at the municipal level there's a city council that then selects a planning commission. So is that where this rests?
That's a really good question. I think it rests in a lot of different locations, and who really owns the plan, I think, is a combination of many entities. But I think first and foremost, at least from my perspective, the community owns the plan. Mm-hmm. It's the community's plan. The volunteers that are appointed by the council, the Planning Commission in particular, help to craft that plan and start to focus on what direction the community should look forward through its policies and goal setting. But at the end of the day, council has to adopt it, and it has to be something that the whole community can really support and get on board with.
So we've talked about like what that plan is. What is it the community's owning, right? So what's a plan look like? What's it do? And we're not talking about ordinances, right, or zoning. What's a plan say? What's the content look like?
Yeah, so for this particular plan, I guess I should step back. There are state statutes that dictate what actually needs to be included in a plan, and I'll let Regina talk about that for the specific components of it. But what we tried to do is focus this plan on existing initiatives that the community has already developed, such as transportation master plans, the branding study that's gone on, some of the economic development reports that have occurred already. Try to focus on not duplicating those efforts and really bringing the information from those studies into this document and look at it from kind of a holistic approach of how do the goals and policies that were identified in those plans meet our statutory requirements that the state needs us to have, but also can be focused to establish policies moving forward for the community.
Great. And so thinking about that too, this isn't obviously just building something out of thin air. Clearly Winooski had a plan before, right? So what's the city been operating under, and once this plan's approved, how far forward does it look? And how long do we think that plan's good for?
Yeah.
So the plan technically lasts for 8 years in terms of the fact that it will expire 8 years from when it's adopted, but it's much more forward-looking than that. It really is a long-term plan, and it's essentially organized based on the city's vision statement, which is organized based on economic vitality, municipal infrastructure, housing, and safe, healthy, connected people. So this plan really does a great job at talking about the community, the services that Winooski provides, and really celebrating the diversity and great things about Winooski, and really calls for carrying that forward into the future. And it's got all kinds of things in there that, as Eric mentioned, are required elements, but really they're all very much supported by the work that Winooski has been doing for the last number of years, and really continues to support that going forward. So from transportation, and you mentioned in the beginning the Main Street Revitalization Project, it includes that. It includes information about what the Housing Commission has been working on in terms of housing, parks, economic development, the school, all kinds of different things, really sort of just brought together in one package with really pretty high-level goals.
Sure.
People would go a little deeper into some of the other plans to get much more specifics about how you might do something.
That's great. So I think, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so as Regina mentioned, this plan is good for, it expires in 8 years. Previous plans were only good for 5 years. And so the plan, this is the first real comprehensive update that the city has undertaken since probably 2004.
Right.
So in about 15 years worth of plans, the 2004 plan has been readopted and slightly tweaked to incorporate any new statutory requirements. But this is the real first update that a plan for the city of Winooski has gone through since 2004.
And as a policy leader, I can say too, the 2004 plan was very directed towards getting financing for the downtown redevelopment, right? So its usefulness is we passed that up many years ago, quite frankly, in terms of it being a document that really guides our investments and whether two things I thought that was interesting. So number one, it's not telling us how to pave a street. It's not telling us, exactly what width each sidewalk should be. It's not telling us what stormwater project we should prioritize specifically, right? You said high level and aspirational. Is that generally correct? It's more of that cut of thinking, right? Vision. Yeah. And then and also you mentioned another idea is a lot of people have probably identified their participation in other planning efforts that have taken place in the city. Maybe they came to branding meetings that you mentioned.
Right.
Maybe they came to the transportation meetings that you talked about. So those plans aren't crumpled up and thrown away and just replaced by this. It's sort of like a spoken hub model. Is that fair?
I'd say so, yeah,
Right.
for sure. Yeah, as much as possible, we tried to incorporate the relevant goals and policies that were still kind of at a higher level from those other planning efforts into this master plan, because we didn't want to duplicate the efforts, and two, we didn't want to have a preconceived direction for how we should be moving the community forward from, for example, a transportation aspect. That transportation master plan has a lot of very detailed information in it, but we didn't want to, with this plan, say, okay, these four things from the transportation master plan are going to become a priority now, without recognizing the work that went into that effort as well.
Great. So folks, if you go to winooskivt.org under current initiatives, you'll find a whole page dedicated to the new plan that lays out the schedule. You can also click on a draft of the plan currently. It's actually a really great looking document too, which is fun. It's interactive, and I think people will find it very accessible. And I think to your point of it being aspirational, doesn't get too deep into the technical jargon. And I think that's important, right? Because that's the general content scope. What subject matter? I think you touched on a lot of them, but are there any other key subject matter items? You mentioned housing, you mentioned economic vitality, some of the scope of the plan in terms of what content people will find when they review that draft?
Probably a few other pieces within the municipal infrastructure realm include parking, stormwater management, water, wastewater, a number of the different services that the city provides and has to, ultimately, probably within the capital improvement plan that you also mentioned earlier, help figure out how to manage all those resources and help keep them going in the future. And so the plan does a great job of sort of just laying out some of the, framework for how the city manages those resources, whether they're state regulations that you're trying to follow or new programs that might be coming down the line that you've got to kind of get in line with. So all kinds of different things like that, and lots of public safety programs, parks, all kinds of stuff.
To police, to fire, to community services.
Yeah, and I think it's important to point out that with this particular plan, because we have focused it around the strategic vision statement with the 4 broad categories, you're not necessarily going to be able to look at the table of contents and see, oh, this is where I'm going to go to find parks and open space. You might have to read into the plan a little bit to get there, but we are covering all aspects of the city that are going to be important to the community.
That's great. And I think, too, to the point of the vision statement, that was something that was passed in an interim basis to try to direct our investments and focuses to say, as a community, we need to prioritize these things. Again, you brought up the economic vitality, the infrastructure experience, the people feeling connected and safe in their community. And so that type of aspirational thinking also makes it feel like the plan's really looking through the eyes of the resident and how they're experiencing then what government hopefully is doing for them, which is really exciting. So I think we've talked about kind of the chapters and content. I want to maybe talk about what happens, right? Is this something pretty that just gets printed and put on a bookshelf, or how does a municipal plan or master plan influence policy and operations?
So I would say in a lot of cases that your first example is what happens. These plans get written, they're a very dense compendium of information that then does just get put on a shelf. I think what we tried to do through the RPC's guidance in this process was to develop a plan that was going to be very accessible to the community, very accessible to the residents and to the readers, that will then help us. I think ultimately we have to establish an implementation program that will come out of this plan. And I think the intent as we work through this is that we will use this master plan to establish at least for the Planning Commission, to establish our work program, which will help dictate the activities we take on an annual basis, that then we can so that we can adjust our focus more easily and with some level of expeditiousness based off of council priorities. So right now the focus might be on housing, but next year, 2 years from now, the focus might be on stormwater. So we want to be able to adjust our work program at the Planning Commission level anyway to match what council needs to go forward. And having this plan at a higher level with kind of more general discussion and tying back to these other planning efforts is really going to make that possible.
And I think just to add from a policy perspective, the greatest myth in democracy, right, is you vote once or twice a year. You get to vote every day, right, with the way you spend your money, the things you choose to engage political leaders or staff to in your community about how the community is being run and what decisions are being made and what we're prioritizing. Your participation and your feedback in what the master plan looks like, this is something that your policymakers are going to consistently look back at as the backbone of structuring where the focuses should be, right? Both in terms of what projects we should be putting money into. If we say, hey, we believe that, this form of economic development, let's say it's tech industry, et cetera, that requires expenditures and technical infrastructure that's necessary, then that's where you put your money, right? And that guides that type of investment. So it's a big deal and another opportunity for folks to really vote. So what's next? What's next for the public engagement process? What's next in terms of the process from the Planning Commission perspective? What can folks expect to see unfold in the coming months?
Yeah, so, and I'll let you add in as well from some of the longer statutory pieces. But so right now we have the plan out as a draft. It's available for public comment, as was mentioned on the website, winooskivt.org, and hard copy in the office. So on December 13th, the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing where we'll be able to take public comments, and based off of the comments that we receive at that meeting, the Planning Commission will have an opportunity to make amendments to the plan as they see are appropriate based on the comments that were provided. After changes or amendments are made, if the Planning Commission sees fit, they will then take action to forward that on to Council, and then the Council will have several opportunities to have public hearings. I believe we've got 2 required public hearings at the Council level as well before they can consider adoption, and then there's also a regional process involved also.
Yep, so the Regional Planning Commission essentially, if requested by the municipalities, and in Chittenden County, all of our municipalities request approval by the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission as well. It basically gets you some more perks, better points in state grants and a number of things. We will start our review process as well this month, right in line with the Planning Commission, with the Winooski Planning Commission review, and then we do our final adoption after the City Council adopts the plan.
Great.
Yeah.
And so there's December the 13th, great opportunity to engage because the plan can actually be adjusted and changed before it goes to City Council, so there's administrative change. Eric, Regina, we are incredibly appreciative of all your efforts and work to steer this important process forward. Folks at home, we appreciate all the participation on the public's behalf to feed into this process. This was In the World of Winooski for November 2018. We're going to take December off, but we'll be back in January to talk budget and lots of budget details. You can look forward to that. But master plan, again, available at www.winooskivt.org. Hope you'll take a second, open up the document, take a look through it, get an idea and feel for the direction we're thinking about for the community and the types of subject matter and content that the Planning Commission is putting forward in terms of ideas for how the community is going to look in the future. So this is a really, really important process and something that's going to leave its mark on our community and our city. Thank you both very much for joining us tonight. Thanks to everybody at home for watching our show. This was In the World of Winooski. Have a great evening.